A catastrophic nuclear reactor meltdown.
One of the atomic reactors at the Chernobyl atomic power plant near the city of Kiev was damaged, and there is speculation in Moscow that people were injured and may have died.
Toxic gas leaked, poisoning thousands in minutes.
During the gas leak, it felt like our eyes were burning and we could not speak. It hurt badly.
A coal waste landslide burying an entire school.
I found myself covered in this material with a dead girl on my shoulder.
Some disasters shake the world, leaving destruction, tragedy, and unanswered questions in their wake.
I understand this is a big disaster.
From human errors to environmental catastrophes, these events changed history forever. This is a new series about the most devastating disasters explained, Part 1.
One of the atomic reactors at the Chernobyl atomic power plant near the city of Kiev was damaged, and there is speculation in Moscow that people were injured and may have died.
April 26, 1986, Chernobyl nuclear power plant, Ukraine. A routine safety test on reactor 4 spirals into catastrophe. Engineers, eager to prove the reactor could power its own cooling systems during a blackout, disable critical safety protocols. But the RBMK reactor's design, unstable at low power, turns fatal. At 1:23 a.m., a power surge triggers 2 explosions, blasting the 1,000-ton reactor lid into the sky. Flames leap 30 meters high, raining radioactive graphite and fuel into the night. Firefighters arrive within minutes, unaware of the invisible killer, gamma radiation. Their boots melt on smoldering debris. By dawn, the true horror emerged. 30 souls lost, 2 in the initial explosion and 28 more to acute radiation syndrome within months. Their bodies betrayed by the very particles they fought to contain. Helicopters later dumped 5,000 tons of sand and boron to smother the blaze, but a radioactive plume drifts across Europe.
It's almost certainly the most severe accident that has ever taken place in the short history of civilian nuclear power.
Pripyat, a city of 50,000, sleeps under this cloud. For 36 hours, Soviet silence. Families picnic, children play, until evacuation orders finally come. Bring documents, you'll return in 3 days. They never did. Long-term consequences unfold. Thyroid cancers spike 100-fold in children exposed to iodine-131, with 6,000 plus cases by 2005. Liquidators, 530,000 cleanup workers, face higher risks, cataracts, cardiovascular disease, and leukemia. But most received doses equivalent to about 10 CT scans. The deepest scar? Trauma. Depression, PTSD, and chronic psychological effects haunt survivors. Today, Chernobyl's exclusion zone spans 2,600 square kilometers. Wolves and lynx roam abandoned schools. Trees grow through apartments. A stark monument to human error and resilience. The final death toll? UN agencies project about 4,000 eventual cancer deaths, though estimates vary. The invisible legacy lingers, a lesson in the cost of secrecy and the atoms we unleash. October 21, 1966. Aberfan, a quiet mining village in Wales, woke to rain-soaked skies. For generations, the Merthyr Vale colliery had been the lifeblood of this community, but it harbored a deadly secret. For years, the colliery had piled its waste, a black slurry from coal mining, into 7 massive tips on the mountainside. Tip number 7, the largest, towered 111 feet above the village, a dark sentinel over the homes and schools below. Then, a deafening roar. Tip number 7, saturated by weeks of relentless rain, liquefied. A wave of 140,000 cubic yards of coal waste thundered downhill at 50 miles per hour. It swallowed a farmhouse, then crashed into Pantglass Junior School. In mere moments, classrooms vanished beneath a tide of black sludge. The village erupted into frantic action. Rescuers, many of them minors, dug with bare hands through the debris. By 11 a.m., the last survivor, 10-year-old Jeff Edwards, was pulled from the mud.
When I woke, I found myself in this, covered in this material with a dead girl on my shoulder.
But as hope faded, the grim toll became clear. 144 lives were lost, among them 116 children, most aged between 7 and 10, and 28 adults. The tragedy shook the nation. Queen Elizabeth II, visibly moved, visited Aberfan. A tribunal was quickly convened, uncovering a terrifying tale of negligence. The National Coal Board had ignored repeated warnings. Springs under the tip had destabilized it for years, yet shockingly no one was prosecuted. The Coal Board's chairman, Lord Robins, even initially claimed that natural unknown springs caused the disaster, a statement later proven false. To add insult to injury, the board used £150,000 from the disaster fund to remove the remaining tips, a cost that should have been theirs to bear. Aberfan's grief reshaped British law. The 1969 Mines and Quarries Act mandated stricter safety regulations for mines and quarries across the UK. But for survivors, the scars remain. A village that lost its future in just 5 devastating minutes. On a chilly December night in 1984, as Bhopal's 1 million residents slept, a faint hiss escaped from Tank 610 at the Union Carbide pesticide plant. Within minutes, 27 to 40 tons of methyl isocyanate gas, a chemical 500 times deadlier than cyanide, engulfed the city in a suffocating fog. This would become the deadliest industrial disaster in human history. Act 1. The nightmare unfolds. At 1 a.m., a toxic cocktail of gases seeped into slums surrounding the plant. Panic erupted as thousands fled, their lungs burning, eyes streaming. Aziza Sultan, a survivor, recalled, "Each breath felt like fire. My baby coughed uncontrollably. By dawn, corpses littered streets, victims of pulmonary edema, cardiac arrest, and neurological collapse. Official immediate deaths reached 3,787, but activists estimate over 8,000 perished in 72 hours. Act 2. A preventable catastrophe. The leak began when water flooded a storage tank, triggering a runaway reaction. Safety systems had been disabled. Refrigeration units meant to cool MIC were shut down. Gas scrubbers sat idle for weeks. Plant alarms failed to warn the public. Investigators later found cost-cutting led to stark safety gaps versus Union Carbide's West Virginia plant, which used automated systems. Act 3. Legacy of suffering.
These are chemicals that stay in the environment for hundreds of years, and they cause extensive damage to lungs, kidney, brain, cancers, birth defects.
40 years later, the disaster persists. 500,000 plus survivors battle blindness, respiratory failure, and cancers. Miscarriages remain 7 times the national average. Groundwater near the abandoned plant contains mercury and carcinogens 500 times safe limits.
It is not bitter, but it tastes strange. The chemical is still in the ground, so I can taste it.
Survivors received $470 million total, roughly $550 per victim. No U.S. executive faced trial. Bhopal stands as a grim monument to corporate negligence. Yet, as factories still skirt safety regulations worldwide, one question lingers. Have we truly learned? August 6, 1945. A lone B-29 bomber, Enola Gay, slices through the Pacific dawn. Inside its belly, little boy. a uranium bomb with the explosive force of 15,000 tons of TNT. At 8:15 a.m., over Hiroshima, it detonates 1,968 feet above the city. In a blinding flash, temperatures soar to 7,000 degrees Celsius, 12,600 degrees Fahrenheit. Buildings melt. Shadows of vaporized humans stain the ground. By nightfall, 80,000 lie dead. 3 days later, another mission. Boxcar, a B-29 carrying Fat Man, a plutonium bomb, veers to Nagasaki after clouds obscure Kokura. At 11:02 a.m., it explodes with 21 kilotons of force. 40,000 perish instantly. A mile-wide inferno engulfs the city. Survivors wander, skin sloughing off, as radioactive black rain falls. The human toll? Unimaginable. Hiroshima, 140,000 dead by year's end. Nagasaki, 74,000. Thousands more succumbed to radiation sickness, cancers, and burns. Cities became skeletal wastelands, yet debate lingers. Was this horror necessary to end World War II?
Hirohito examined maps of the capital showing the enormous areas of ruin. It must have been obvious to him that surrender was the only course. It should have been clear to all Japanese that the so-called Son of Heaven, as a divinely inspired leader, had been bombed out.
Emperor Hirohito surrendered on August 15th, citing the bomb's new and most cruel weapon. But the legacy endures. Hibakusha, survivors bearing scars and stigma, became symbols of resilience. Their plea? Never again. From ashes rose a global reckoning. The Cold War arms race began, but so did movements to ban nuclear tests. Today, Hiroshima's Peace Memorial whispers, "This is what we survived. This is why we must remember." On a clear December night in 1987, the Philippine ferry MV Doña Paz, overcrowded with families, students, and vendors returning home for Christmas, became the stage for history's deadliest peacetime maritime disaster. Its collision with the oil tanker MT Vector in the shark-infested Tablas Strait ignited a firestorm that claimed 4,386 lives. Only 26 survived. The fateful collision. At 10:30 p.m. as passengers slept, Doña Paz, carrying 4,000-plus people, far beyond its 1,500 capacity, slammed into Vector. Which was laden with 1,041 tons of gasoline. The explosion lit the sky, trapping passengers in a maze of flames.
I heard a huge sound, almost like thunder.
Survivors described jumping into water, a fire with gasoline, clutching suitcases as makeshift floats.
The fire was huge. The flames grew to almost a kilometer wide.
Crew members later found negligent, had been drinking or watching TV. Life jackets, locked away, rescue and survivors. The passenger ferry Don Claudio arrived an hour later, rescuing 24 from Doña Paz and 2 from Vector. Among them, a 4-year-old boy and 14-year-old Valeriana Duma, who revealed her survival decades later. Authorities took 16 hours to launch rescue operations. Aftermath, a nation's grief. Overcrowding, Christmas travelers bought illegal tickets, bypassing manifests. Vector's owners were deemed liable, operating without a license or qualified crew. Doña Paz's operator, Sulpicio Lines, faced protests but avoided blame. The disaster exposed systemic failures, lax safety, corruption, and poor emergency response in Philippine maritime travel. The Doña Paz tragedy, dubbed Asia's Titanic, remains a grim lesson in human complacency. As families light candles for the lost each December, the strait's waters whisper a warning. Safety must never sink beneath profit or neglect. Entire cities left uninhabitable, generations affected by a single moment of disaster. Some of these tragedies were preventable, others inevitable, but all of them left scars that will never fade. Which disaster shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most devastating events. This was just the beginning. Stay tuned for more in our series on the most devastating disasters explained.